We have a special guest with us today as part of the expert speak that we do at Vitrina. We have the Chief Revenue Officer for Gracenote, Tim Cutting, who's joining us all the way from the very sunny Napa Valley. Welcome, Tim. Great to have you here. It's always great to catch up with old friends and old colleagues. We go back a long way, but today, thanks for joining in. To speak to the Vitrina network. As we discussed, we'll talk about some of the major moves that Gracenote has been doing in FAST and in the FAST category. So excited to kick off our conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here, Atul. And of course, we go way back, so we'll try to keep it professional for everybody today on today's podcast.
we will try our best.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, Tim, one of the sort of the biggest things that we've seen in the last maybe couple of years has been this whole revolution relating to FAST. Especially last year. I mean, just the number of FAST channels that were launching. You had a host of solutions that were launching also relating to technology enablers for the FAST ecosystem. You had folks that were playing in the playlist management, to the publishing of FAST channels, to even the things like ad management, right? Gracenote actually has seen that. Obviously, you've been studying the space for a long time with all the play that Gracenote has. How do you see the FAST ecosystem really having changed and getting more mature as we go along?
Yeah, well, I think for one maturity measure, folks are using the word bubble a little bit less. I think when it first came on the scene, right, some folks were kind of unprepared. Some industry players rushed right in, and others kind of sat on the sidelines going, "Is this a fluke? What is this?" I think the one thing that I always try to gravitate towards with my kind of culture here at Gracenote is, what does it mean for the consumer? Forget all the industry pundits for 1 minute. Even forget a little bit about how money flows in the industry, which we know is important and drives adoption. But what does it mean for the consumer? Are they going to adopt it? And I think the word that FAST it doesn't use enough is the word free. And I think consumers love free TV. I mean, many of us grew up with rabbit ears and antenna. That was free TV. It was advertising supported. We went into a pay TV model for many years with cable. And none of us will say we don't like, we wouldn't love to have ad free, but we know that comes with a cost. And in many of these streaming services now, you can pay to remove ads or keep the ads. But, for most consumers where their personal budgets matter, their money matters, being able to be entertained for free with the cost of some advertisements makes a lot of sense. I think the second thing that really made it work for me with consumers is the fact that often consumers start with a question of, what should I watch? And if you're sitting with friends, I'm sure you've done this, and we know people do, you say, what are you in the mood for? And FAST is really intriguing because FAST is a concept where it drives very quickly the question of what genre or theme you're looking for to watch. And so, I think FAST has a lot of opportunities for consumers, and just its cost to entry is zero for many people. And the ability to find content faster based around your themes or your moods is very compelling. The industry itself, once they kind of got an understanding that consumers, demand content in this way, then of course they had to figure out, how do they find enough unique ads for it, and how do they program it, how they send it. And I think those will be some of the things we talk about here on this podcast of what's the magic behind the screen. How does FAST get produced, scheduled, delivered? And obviously at Gracenote, we're more experts on the data side of that equation and how data gets fulfilled and fills that screen to ultimately allow the consumer to search by theme or genre and find the content they want.
That's right. No, again, great points. And I totally echo the aspect relating to free TV. And the free part is not really well understood. Again, for folks who are dialing in, the whole premise of free ad-supported television has always existed on the linear side, and we've sort of grown up with that. And then as that's sort of invaded the streaming space and become very, very mainstream, it's been fascinating to see how that ecosystem has really exploded with new players, just a raft of people entering now with fast channels. But the rest of the ecosystem has also lit up. So you've got more technology companies sort of providing solutions to enable fast playlists and programming management, to more operators carrying those and apps carrying those, to now sort of the ad space piece is also really exploding with new entrants and new players trying to do the ad management very well. And again, I mean, I'd love to sort of understand, from an ecosystem perspective, are there specific areas that you thought have surprised you, Tim, just in terms of how the ecosystem has matured very rapidly, or hasn't in certain?
Yeah, I would almost say more hasn't. Like it feels like the industry kind of. I'm not sure, and I'd have to go back and look quickly at like Wikipedia, the history of FAST, to remember all the little steps along the way. But I will say we've gotten to a critical mass, and it feels a little bit like the industry is a little bit unorganized. You have some key leaders that are, focused on the video distribution. Obviously, Gracenote is very strong in the metadata side of discovering content and helping consumers enjoy and connect to the content they love, but also helping those aggregators deliver a powerful user experience for those consumers. And in this world, you have a very strong constituency in the content publisher. They are the ones that own this valuable content. They're the ones that have the artistic intent of how they want to program it or schedule it. Everybody knows what a channel is by definition. It's a series of multiple episodes or TV or movies in a linear fashion that you can kind of lean back and just plays out. And I think we've seen a refreshing return to linear through this process, because I think this idea that you were going to pick every show to watch in a VOD catalog requires a lot of mental thought. What am I going to watch next? What am I going to watch next? And I think consumers are telling us that, that TV living room experience needs to be a little more passive. The ability to sit down, flop on a couch and let the TV do the programming for you is a perfect fit for this fast channel, right? So back to the constituencies, I think the publishers are the ones that have a loud voice. They're the ones that are bringing up these deep catalog titles that maybe they got buried on a 100-channel pay TV subscription, or they were buried in SVOD because there was always what new original Netflix or Disney or Hulu or HBO were making. And deep in there was this really cool content that people enjoyed. I mean, you look at the resurgence of Friends in the last several years and the phenomena of Suits on Netflix, and you're seeing deep catalog get a lot of attention, which is great for Gracenote. Like, that's our focus. Is we have the world's largest TV and movie database. We spend, hours and hours, months and years curating that content. So the pedigree of the data is very high, consistent, normalized, and then we apply an industry ID set to that everybody operates on. And so you can imagine when the publisher has their artistic intent figured out, what content do I want to create into a channel? How do I want to order that content? What episodes? We were talking before the podcast about, a serialized content might start episode 1, 2, 3, 4. We would call that original air date, probably driving the progression. But other content that's more thematic, reality shows, Saturday Night Live, any of this type of content doesn't need to go in order, right? You can have an entire theme of Thanksgiving Saturday Night Live specials that you put in order. Twilight Zone. No one remembers what order Twilight Zone came in. You just sit down for half an hour of Twilight Zone. So I think the content publisher first figures out the content, then they figure out the order they want to put it in. And then, there's partners in the industry that do an amazing job, and are industry leaders at driving the video distribution of that equation. But because metadata has long been owned by various segments of the supply chain, there's the content creator metadata, there's the distribution metadata, there's even discovery metadata. And they all share some common traits. but I think rightfully so, Hulu is allowed to merchandise its content in its own way,
Right.
in ways that make Hulu differentiated maybe from a competitor. And so what we find is that these aggregators, these large fast channel aggregators, comes to mind with Pluto and Amazon and YouTube, that many of them have standardized on the Gracenote metadata. So they really want that channel, once the content's been decided and the schedule's been decided, they want to get that Gracenote pedigree in there so that there's no gaps in imagery, so that the descriptions are the proper lengths for their systems, while still preserving artist intent of the data. They still need it normalized and structured and with an ID system that their systems know how to handle. And so when I said a few minutes ago that I thought the industry has room to mature, I don't know that the industry ever got into a room, looked around with all the constituents and said, this is how fast this is going to work.
That's right. That's right.
And that's what led, for our part, our data part of it, that's what led Gracenote earlier this year to launch a fast channel program to drive more education around how the data side of the equation works, to pull more constituents together, to have voices that are heard from each other around the supply chain of when should you go to a Gracenote or work on your data, when you're going to go sign a big deal with YouTube to get your fast channel into their network. I think everybody dealt with the advertising equation. How will they make money? What the content was. And then, of course, they found the promised land with a great aggregator that was going to bring their channel to consumers. And the afterthought was the data. And the problem was that was creating friction for time to market and speed. And that's what we hope to try to solve with some of our more awareness campaigns here.
Right, right. And when you say data, essentially what the data is enabling is a much faster and much more precise discovery.
Yeah.
Or relating to maybe a topic, relating to a genre, relating to maybe a character or a
Yeah, the way I like to speak about it in 2023 is, for many years, and even on this podcast so far, we've talked about the metadata for the benefit of the consumer.
Yes.
So the consumer can find shows and search that. What is often forgotten or not mentioned enough is the technical side of the data.
That's right.
Before the consumer can ever search with a natural language keyword like romance or science fiction or Thanksgiving, the systems below that search bar or voice search or discover experience have to understand that taxonomy. They have to be able to deduplicate content that sounds similar. I get in trouble for always using the Ghostbuster example, but it's a great one because there's so many movies named Ghostbuster, yet they're all very different, right? Different years of release, different actors, different stories. And so the systems have to be able to disambiguate between content that has the same title. And they have to know, that the descriptors and the way we would describe one of those Ghostbusters might actually be very different. I mean, one has a mostly female lead cast and one has a mostly male lead cast, right? I forget exactly. I'm assuming they're all set in New York, but the thing is those movies do differ. And so the taxonomies and the way people discover content might choose to put one of those movies into a different fast channel than a different one based on the themes and genres and discovered elements. Long story short, all of that data is to feed the machines that are powering that consumer experience. And those machines, just like any kind of barcode system or any type of scantrons or electronic systems that are reading data, they need to be able to understand the catalog that they're administering. And so that's really where Gracenote comes in. I think most people, it would resonate understanding search engine optimization. I don't think anyone creates a website today just throwing words on the page and saying that looks great marketing wise. They really study their analytics of their presentation, understand how Google and Bing and these other search engines are going to categorize their page, because it's so valuable to be found at the top of the search results.
That's right.
Gracenote is no different. Our data is the fuel for this search engine optimization of these aggregator video playback systems.
And Gracenote does just such a great job on the more complex side of the equation, which is the on-demand stuff. which is much more fragmented. It's much more scattered, right? So
Yeah.
when you actually sort of have a much more structured sort of linear method for fast channels, I'm guessing that would have been an even more stronger solution.
Yeah, I think, when you think about VOD by itself, all the metadata and work we do is to a single asset
That's
to
right.
get you to pick it up when you want to discover it or be found in a system. With linear, this is really what plays to the Gracenote strengths. I mean, we have been for decades the leaders in broadcast TV guides.
Right.
What is a TV guide? It's a large assortment of generally 14 days preview of what's airing next hour or 10 days from now. It powered DVRs, it powered tune-in. In the fast space, it's the closest we have in streaming to that world, where content is being pre-programmed in a linear fashion. Even though it's all made up of a series of VOD assets, it's being put into a time-based program. That's also plays right into the expertise of Gracenote, where I think that the industry has found that it's easier to rely on an expert that's been doing this for a while than start to create all these bespoke functions at different companies when you can kind of get a cost-effective solution from someone that just does this for their living every day for multiple reasons. And, I think the last part we haven't mentioned that plays in is Gracenote, because we do it for everybody, we by default nature become a global distribution system of that. And so many content publishers have come to Gracenote and said, put my channel into your guide, for lack of a better term, because that way we can get picked up by those aggregators when they're looking for, the various genres of channels. And I mean, these genres are fun. They're all over the board, from, haunted home genres to meat eater channels to hunting channels to, political focus, you name it. And so by bringing their content in, categorizing it in the Gracenote system, we're able to send it out anywhere in the world that they do a business deal and need to be picked up.
One aspect on the fast that I was curious about, Tim, was that the ecosystem had, just because of the simplicity of launching a fast channel, right? A host of new entrants have also been introduced, correct? And I mean, last year we were actually seeing, in certain markets, even distribution companies using a lot of their inventory to sort of roll new and spin up new fast channels.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that is like a completely new constituency for Gracenote as well, right? Your traditional sort of areas of strength for Gracenote have been the of course the telcos and the cable companies and the platforms that typically required to provide search for their services.
Yeah.
And then that kind of flowed into some of the streamers who typically also required a very powerful metadata search to power all the content search on their apps.
Yeah.
But on the other side, some of the new entrants into Gracenote's life seem to be perhaps these new distribution companies and distributors.
Gracenote is growing. And we're growing in an exciting way. We're growing into new clientele and new segments. And I think that whereas Gracenote's backbone and tradition has been with the discovery side of the market, the aggregators that rely on Gracenote to help them power these large, once fragmented catalogs, but pull them all into one cohesive offering. In this space, we're finding new business and new relationships with these content publishers and their distribution partners, folks that are saying, we actually want to push content in the Gracenote versus being pulled. Of course, the large aggregators still pull content through Gracenote, but the idea of...
And when you say content, just want to clarify, Tim, right? When you say content, it's essentially the metadata relating to all of
Yeah, let me, thank you for the reminder. We have a broad audience. So
that's right.
Disclaimer, Gracenote doesn't distribute any content itself, but we sometimes veer into using the word content because we're so close to it. We are delivering the data about the content. And so and thank you for clarifying that, when these aggregators are pulling the metadata that relates to the content through Gracenote, now we're finding these new clients are pushing the metadata into Gracenote so that their content can be found and picked up by these downstream aggregators. So, I mean, that is definitely something that's not lost on us. of the value that Gracenote is as a distribution network of, of data around the content that brings just the quality and the pedigree and the, you know, everything needed by those machines and ultimately the consumer to find that content.
And look, I mean, I cannot emphasize the criticality of discovery, right? Because, you know, launching the fast channel is only half the problem, right? You've got a great library, you spun that differently and, you know, created, let's say, 5 different fast channels. But, you know, launching the fast channels is half the problem. The other half is getting it discovered by consumers. On the other side of the screen, they better find it. And if they find it, they view it. If they view it, then the ads get seen. And that's how businesses will make money. Otherwise, if for channels that don't get watched, the operators will quickly take them away and take them off, right? We've seen some brutal cleanup and purge as well. For channels that don't get consumed, you know, they will just disappear very quickly, right?
There was something that you hit upon that I wanted to go back to, which was large aggregators pulling up this deep content into this fast channel world. And I think there is an economic thread to this whole industry that we haven't talked about in the podcast, which is I think what we've seen and the news has reported is that these large companies that invested so much in original content have found that to be a challenging long-term economic model. It might make sense, like any tentpole major movie release can spend X and then make Y back over a short period of time. And that still does play out in streaming for some of the lucky ones that made that winning movie or TV show. But for a lot of the original content, which there was a lot the last several years, not all of it's returning its value, I think, to some of the folks that were funding it. And what you see with Fast is you see an exciting opportunity to create content that consumers enjoying, monetize the content through advertising, and it can be highly syndicatable content that you picked up from even a competitor. I mean, I'm seeing HBO's content, which for a while there was locked only on HBO Max, and I'm seeing it in these other streaming providers. So clearly HBO is out there making good money, syndicating their valuable content to other aggregators. And I don't know that HBO's content's finding its way into fast channels, but it's just an example of where syndication, which we're hearing from the leaders of these streaming providers, see as a great revenue stream of getting additional gain by sending out their content to other platforms. You know, that's what fast channel is all about. It's about syndicated content, finding the deep catalog, resurfacing it, polishing it up and putting some gleam on it again, and getting people excited, the next generation excited in Friends or Suits or Baywatch or Knight Rider or any of the, you know, Happy Days or any of these kind of, I think when we grew up, Atul, it wasn't fast channels. It was, there were certain hours of the day that were the reruns.
That's right.
But we all loved those reruns because our parents watched them when they were kids and they resonated with us and they were kind of timeless content. And I think you see that in fast channel. It's either highly thematic, where it's not timeless, but it's very focused on what the consumer wants, or it's timeless content. And this is a great way to dust off content that wasn't generating much revenue. And now in a fast channel model can be brought to new audiences or easier discovered. It's not on the 10th page of search results. It's right front and center in its own channel. And that's a great way to monetize the deeper catalog and to drive revenue, you know, in a world that maybe is getting a little fatigued with all the original content and can't keep up with it.
Well, one of my favorite fast channels is usually relating to old science fiction shows. So Star Trek is one of those staples, right? That you always go back to, or you mentioned Friends and Seinfeld and so on. These are just such iconic brands that you can tune into any episode and you know, invest a little bit of time, as long as the discovery got you exactly to that particular fast channel. But Tim, I had 2 or 3 sort of rapid fire questions for you. So a few weeks ago, Gracenote launched the Gracenote Fast program. And I wanted to understand a couple of things relating to that, right? One is, who is that intended for? Is it for these production houses and distribution companies, or, you know, traditional channels who are launching their fast offerings? Or is it for the operators, or is it middling both?
I think really more the first one. I mean, it's to benefit the industry. So certainly us getting organized around fast channels.
Okay.
And if you will, I don't want to use the word advertising because we didn't do it just to drive, our own revenue growth. It's advertising in the education meaning of the word. It's educating the market on how the system works of video distribution over here, metadata distribution over here. It all gets married back up at your
Operator
partner, your aggregator video channel, your Pluto or Amazon or YouTube or some of these other favorite ones out there. Excuse me. So I think what the main thing was awareness.
Okay.
But back to constituencies, it's really driving an earlier engagement with Gracenote and the content publisher.
Okay.
What we were all being affected by was the content publisher inking a deal with the aggregator, everybody's setting their timelines, and then coming to Gracenote at the last minute and saying, oh, and by the way, I need my catalog, indexed and organized and all of that. When we get a catalog in, we have a moment of truth all of a sudden. What state was that catalog in? Right. If someone really was highly polished and knew what they were doing and knew what was expected of the aggregator platform, it might come in very clean. And that's very quick for us to simply apply our IDs, fill in any quick gaps. But sometimes it's not. And sometimes we have to do a little research on the content to make sure that we have the right metadata applied to the right content, or we have to author some metadata. If it was completely missing, maybe there's 8 episodes and there's 2 description missing. You can't just poof all of a sudden make a description. So you've got to understand the content and then apply that description. Even with automated workflows, there's still some level of audit and curation that has to go on. Right. And while we're always trying to move faster, pardon the pun at Gracenote, and we're always trying to add more automation where we can in our workflows, it's never a bad thing to have an engagement start earlier.
Right.
It's never a bad thing to know that somebody wants to do something and they bring you the challenge or opportunity sooner so that you can just quickly move them through your schedule system and get them out the door and ready with your data well before the aggregator needs it to go live. So if I had to sum up the program in one way, it was to drive greater awareness and drive more kind of preparation and thought into how the supply chain works around the data side of it. And, make sure that folks are aware of kind of the role we can play for them in that.
Understood. And the other related question that I had was that, is the metadata for content, in FAST also influencing the choice of ads? Is there, I have sort of, are you seeing some of those patterns from a data?
I think it will. Contextual advertising around content is definitely something we're watching.
Okay.
I believe we have a role to play in that. I believe it's a very young industry. And so I can't say for sure right now how much the content is influencing the ad dollar, if that's what you're asking, or the match between what advertisement is going. Are horror movies in the horror genre of FAST driving a different ad load or ad choice selection than elsewhere? I think those decisions are not as transparent and are private, really at the aggregator level. I do think the ad ecosystem should take notice of all of this rich taxonomy and thematic content. And I think there is opportunity for that ad ecosystem to get smart. We started the call talking about the maturity of FAST, and I can say from personal experience, excuse me, from personal experience, I think it is still very immature ad load. And I say that as a consumer. The experience varies widely between aggregators as to how many ads you watch.
Right.
In many cases, I'm seeing the ads repeat way too often. Generally on broadcast TV, over an hour, you might see an ad twice sometime in the hour. I'm seeing sometimes the ad repeat every ad load. Every ad break, I'm seeing the same ad. That's not engaging for the client. If anything, that's a turn off.
That's right.
I'm seeing
there is an idea there, right?
About that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, there is an idea there where the metadata itself can also spark off a lot of contextual advertising, and then some of these issues that you are pointing out of the same ads repeating could typically sort of just be better management of ad inventory.
Yeah.
Going forward.
To me, it's just a sign of immaturity of the market.
Right.
Meaning they've got their ads running, they've got the fast channels, they got the consumers. It's often like when you build something, you build version 1, and then you sit back and say what's working well and what's not. Clearly, there are certain things that are working well right now. The video distribution and the programming and the metadata. When we're involved, you've got it all kind of coming together cleanly at the aggregator level. But I think the ads, I will say this, it's player by player as far as the quality. So I think that some folks are paying a lot of attention to the ads and realize that's part of the product, and other folks are monetizing the ads and not thinking as much about the consumer experience. And ultimately, I think the consumers are fine with ads, but they don't want to see the same ad 5 times in an hour. So
right.
People are going to have to be smart about the ad too. And you keep bringing up contextual advertising. I think there's definitely opportunity for higher CPMs and higher ad revenue when you put more context into the ads, which is, one problem can be don't have the ad repeat. Another could be which ad should we use with this type of content or this fast channel. I think those are all opportunities for the ecosystem to look at.
Got it. And last 2 questions, Tim. One was relating to, we're talking about discovery of content, but there is also a discovery of the channels themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sort of playing a role in both of those with the aggregators?
Yes, I think it's similar to the question we talked earlier about the content publisher does publish some metadata as they expected to for both the content and the channel. Gracenote plays a role in both. So when we get the channel, our job is to make sure that every attribute of that channel, from the content itself to the channel itself, lives up to the governance rules and standards of the aggregator platform. So each platform has its different requirements. Some might have imagery around the channel. Some might have logo treatments. That's what Gracenote specializes in, is understanding the requirements of the destination platform. Those are our clients. So we've already been aligned for multiple years on what their needs are. We have SLAs to deliver said requirements. So when a publisher comes to us, a tool, they're often not just getting the content treatment and the scheduling and the linear time-based metadata treatment. They're also getting metadata about the channel itself. Understood.
No, that's super useful. And one related question was really relating to if there is a distribution company, let's for simplicity's sake, say that there is a Brazilian distribution company that's thinking about launching a fast channel, right? At what point should they connect with Gracenote? Is it when they're planning the fast channel, they already have a plan and they have a few sort of aggregator relationships? At what point should they really bring you in and say, okay, you know what, this is the content that we're running, this is the metadata. Gracenote, do you have all of this content already indexed or not? When should that dialogue really happen?
It's a great question. Clearly, what I've been saying in this podcast is I think a lot of them are coming in at the business juncture, which is late. The minute they have a signed distribution deal, and that's late. They should be. We don't need to be talking at the total original artistic level where they're deciding which content. We'd be sitting around waiting for them to make decisions of which content and which scheduling kind of order you want to put it in. But I think once they have their channel filled out, these are the episodes or movies, this is the order we want to put it in, then they're ready to come over to us and say, does our metadata meet the requirements of our aggregator? Do we need to work with you to improve, standardize, normalize, get your ID applied against it so that the systems can dedupe that content when it comes in, and make it part of a first-class citizen in the universal search that these aggregator platforms rely on. So I think once you've got your programs figured out and scheduled, that'd be a great time to come over, which in theory predates you going to do your distribution deals. because you now have enough to go get said distribution deal. That's also when you should be talking to us about the metadata distribution. It's likely the same time you're talking to the other leaders in video distribution. That's when you should be thinking about the metadata side of the equation as well.
Understood. No, a great point. And again, I'm sure this has been a big education sort of journey for some of the folks who are thinking about fast channels, thinking about how discovery will happen for both their channel as well as for their content.
Yeah.
With the audiences who are sort of searching for them and looking for that exact content.
Yeah.
Tim, again, always a pleasure to speak to you. You are an expert in this field, especially relating to content discovery. And with this new leg of fast channel, sort of discovery for both content and channels, this has been a great sort of educational sort of journey for our network as well. So thank you so much for spending time with us. How do people get in touch with Gracenote if they have requirements in this space?
Good question. We are working on revamping our website, but certainly you should be able to go to gracenote.com today, and okay, you'll be able to get in contact with us through there. If you're coming in for the first time, find that contact form. All leads get generated to the right folks, and then we'll work on taking care of your needs and engaging around whatever problem statement you're bringing us. And if it's distribution in the fast channel and you've been listening to the podcast, then you know that we're ready to receive you and kind of work on your catalog and get you distributed out there to whoever you ink your deals with.
Fantastic. Again, thanks so much, Tim, for sharing your views and the whole update about Gracenote's FAST program. Pleasure talking to you as always.
Yeah, thanks for the time, and glad we could chat about that.
Likewise. Fantastic.